friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here for another in my series of my basic essentials for various different things. So I'm breaking these up into topics, and these are just going to be the bare basic essentials, but that doesn't mean I don't have or add more to this. And any ideas you have you would like to add to my list, please put them in comments down below so others can get some ideas from you as well. And I'm going to try to remember to type this one up, my list, and put the link to that list in the description box right at the top down below, as well as the link to the full playlist. Since this is actually the third in the series, and this one is the medical essentials. And obviously, I think the very first essential people should have is as much head knowledge as they can get in studying and learning, but also in stocking up on books, such as first aid books, medical books. One of the books I recommend quite often, and I always forget the name of it, but I'll put a picture of it here so you can see that and link to it in the description box down below. I've had that book for many years and was actually able to diagnose correctly a couple of odd things that had come up through the years in both myself and my kids, one of them being a very rare thing that I had to deal with. And I still went to the doctor, to make sure that I was right, and I was right. I had it figured out before they did, in fact, especially on the rare one, because back then it was so not known, and they were doing test after test after test on me. And finally, it came down to exactly what I thought it was. And just having some basic first aid knowledge, you should really get that down. That is so important. So there's a lot of this stuff that with the knowledge thing, you can glean just from watching YouTube videos, and it doesn't have to cost anything or weigh anything or take up space. But still, having good books on hand to remind you how to do these things if you need to go back and look is going to be incredibly important. Now, some other ideas for those books besides those are going to be books that teach you how to use herbs that you're already growing or that grow wild in your area. So one book I commonly recommend for people in my area in the Pacific Northwest is this one right here. But this company makes books for other regions within the United States. I think they have 5 or 6 different books. So what I'll do is I'll link to where you can see all of them in one place, because they have, Pacific Northwest, they have Southwest, they have Southeast and Northeast, and a couple more, I think. So those I recommend simply because they teach you about the herbs, the medicinal herbs that grow wild in your area already, so you can learn about them. They include photos and information on what they are good for. But it's also a good idea to have a basic herb book that also can teach you how to make extracts, tinctures, maybe share a few recipes, even if I never use anybody else's recipes and always make up my own. For those who are just getting started, that might be helpful. So obviously with that, for me personally, it's also being able to grow a lot of these herbs in my own area. And so it's not just about knowing what's out there and what grows wild. In fact, when I first got into this, I was more looking into what herbs are good for what. In fact, I just did a video on 4 tips when you're trying to decide what medicinal herbs you want to grow in your own area. And I'll link to that video down below. I recommend you go watch that. But yeah, for me, it was looking for herbs that helped with specific things and then making sure to grow those. Now, down the road, I found other herbs that grow wild that already around here that I really didn't need to buy a lot of these herb seeds, but I still prefer growing right here in my own area than having to take the time to go forage for these things. But also since then, especially this year, giving my garden a rest, I've had a lot of wild herbs coming up on their own that came over, carried from birds or the horse manure a few years ago or whatever it was, and have learned what they are and am learning about their medicinal benefits. I've done a video on a few of these things, but some of these wild things are going to be dandelion, plantain, lady's thumb, dock, which can also be used as a grain for making breads, And I don't have a video on that one yet, but I'm going to be doing a video on that. And boy, so much more. So much more. So that's just a little bit. Oh, and let's not forget the turkey tail mushroom. So learn about these things, but also learn about which ones, to me, having those on hand is very important. So I have them when I need them. And another video I want to link you to is the last one I did just this earlier this year about herbs I recommend you grow. But that's just my personal recommendations. You're going to have to look into what's best for you, but you may still want to check that out because it is a pretty lengthy list, and you can go through that and just get some ideas if nothing else. Now, the other thing that I'm going to make sure that I always am growing are things like grapes, apples, blackberries, and other fruits that I can use to make wine, because I don't have to rely on spirits to make alcohols for making my tinctures. I can just use homemade wine. Though in some cases spirits are better, so it may be a good idea at some point to either build or invest in a still so that you can make your own spirits for making your tinctures if you're wanting to use those kind of, barks and mushrooms and stuff that do better using a higher proof alcohol than something like wine. But in most cases, I simply use my homemade wine. It's virtually free. But the other thing I need to go with that I do stock up on, though it can be made without it, but to make a stronger alcohol content is having some kind of sugar that can create that alcohol. So it's either going to be organic cane sugar or it's going to be raw honey, which is what you typically use when you're making mead. Mead is simply honey wine. It can be made without fruit. It can be made with simply honey and water. So if you're keeping bees, which we do still hope to do at some point, but it would have to be on our other piece of property and we'd have to have a good sheltered area for them. That would be something that we do want to do eventually. So we always have access to some kind of sugar for things like making wine or just making some yummy desserts. But anyway, that's important to me for my apothecary so that when I want to have tinctures, that is typically what I'm going to use. And of course, you can still even stock up on rum, vodka, whiskey, or even tequila, whatever you can get for a good price. And you can use those for making your tinctures as well. So other things aside from that are going to be things like all natural fabrics, such as cotton, especially cotton t-shirt. In fact, you can save like old cotton t-shirts that may have got holes in them or whatever and cut them up into rags as long as they're 100% cotton. Linen especially is going to be the best. So I'm stocking up on linen that I'm going to save for using for bandages. The thing about linen is not only can it help to heal, it's going to provide better breathability, but the recycled t-shirt material is going to work good. Now, a lot of you are going to be thinking, but you need it to be sanitary. So this is why a lot of people will stock up on bandages and gauze, which we have that too. But I want to be able to have something that I can reuse over and over again. Well, how was this done in the past? Just like with feminine napkins, they were washed and boiled. You can sanitize these cloths so that they can be used again. And you can cut them to any shape or width or length that you desire. And then just hem the edges if you need to. That's what makes a t-shirt material nice, is you never have to worry about hemming it. You just cut it. And we have tons of t-shirt rags around here that get used for multiple purposes, including for wound care. So in fact, many years ago, because we always kept these in our camp trailer, when our kids were young and my youngest son got a really, really deep cut on his finger. And we knew that, his finger was so small and I could actually see the bone when I pulled the skin apart. And I'm thinking, no matter which way we go, it's going to take, where we're at, it's going to take us about an hour to get to a hospital. And they're probably not even going to stitch it up anyway because his finger is so tiny. A lot of times they don't bother with that. They just put a bandage on it and a little bit of Neosporin. And it's like, I can do that here. So that's what I did. And then though we did have Band-Aids, because he was bleeding so badly, we did wrap it in some t-shirt rags we already had on hand. And then you can even use those, the t-shirt rags or the linen or the cotton fabric, to make a sling for an arm that's maybe sprained, broken, or you got a bad cut and you're just trying to keep it protected. And I've done that with t-shirt rags before as well. Even if it takes a couple of them, you just tie them together. And then another thing is having something that, in case of a broken leg or anything that can happen that can prevent a person from being able to walk, is having a set of crutches and or some kind of wheelchair on hand. You never know when that's going to be necessary. In fact, a couple of years ago, I sprained my ankle really bad. And I was like, man, I wish I had some crutches. And it just so happened right after that, Patrick was at the dump and he saw like a brand new pair of crutches sitting there. He grabbed them and brought them home. I'm like, yes. And when I injured my knee that time, a couple of years after that, it's been over a year. Has it been almost 2 years? I think it's been almost 2 years. I don't know. It's been well over a year. I know that. Those crutches came in handy again because I tore an ACL and I could not walk. But then we also brought home, when my mom passed away and we were cleaning her place out, we actually brought home her electric scooter, which isn't exactly a wheelchair, takes up a lot more room, but it does make a fun ride for the grandbabies around this room. But in a pinch, we could also use that if we had to. Though it is electric, I would still like to have just a standard wheelchair, something I can fold up small and keep that handy. So I'm going to keep my eye out for something like that. And then something I always have had on hand, because being a dancer and a martial artist, I was always spraining something, a finger, a toe, a knee, an ankle, something, a wrist. So I have all kinds of different wraps. A lot of them are neoprene wraps. I recommend those more than just like an ace bandage, because ace bandages wear out. And, you know, they can be a hassle when you're trying to wrap them. But getting a good neoprene wrap that you can pull over, especially one that even has its own built-in wrap that you can, I have one for my ankle when I sprained it really bad, that not only could I put this wrap on and Velcro it to fit my ankle and foot, it also had these elastic type pieces that you could wrap around it like an ace bandage that have Velcro on them, so I don't have to pin it or use those weird little clips. So those are the types I recommend the most. And then for something that's not as serious, then I have slip-on ones for my ankles and for my knees. And then I have the kind that you just wrap once for your wrist, and they have Velcro like here and here. And those have been used many, many times, all of those. And even at one for the back too, because we have one of those as well, because Patrick, we had to get one for him a good number of years ago when he hurt his back pretty bad. So, and we keep all that stuff. We don't throw that stuff out. Oh yes, I also even have splints for my wrists. So that's going to be more of a worst case scenario. And even though I have a lot of home remedies for pain and inflammation, I still recommend in a worst case scenario that you have ibuprofen and or acetaminophen on hand. Sometimes you're going to need something that's a little more powerful. It doesn't mean it's something you have to take on a continual basis. I still keep some on hand just in case. And there's been some rare instances where that has been needed because the natural stuff wasn't doing the trick, but at least for Patrick. Now for me, I find my homemade pain remedy tincture has worked well for me in just about everything. And then of course, things like isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide are recommended to have on hand. We have quite a bit of that stocked up, but again, coming back to the alcohol, having a way to make your own for, you know, which again, this is where that still is going to come in handy for making a spirit so that you can disinfect things with that and not have to rely on the isopropyl alcohol or the peroxide. Something that you can make more of, and you just keep doing that as is needed. So having the skill and knowledge to do those things are going to be very important. And then I also do have some sutures. Thankfully, we've never needed, but I did buy a pack of those a few years ago from Amazon. And you'll see that in the series I did. I think it might even be the last video in the series. I'm not sure, but my on-the-go preparedness series, I'll link to that full series down below, where I was starting with just a few things that I keep in my purse and then kind of working up into my bigger and bigger bags and what I keep in them. And then some additions I added as I was going. And so the sutures were one of the things that I thought to look up and add, because you never know when you might need something like that. And then other things that I like to keep in stock are things that are going to be good for making salves, shea butter, coconut oil, beeswax. And then I also do oil infusions. So having things like castor oil and avocado oil, which a lot of times now I just mix those two together in about a 50-50 blend and infuse my different healing herbs in there. So it's going to be things like comfrey, plantain, dandelion flowers, calendula flowers, and so much more. And I can make healing salves out of that I can apply in place of something like Neosporin. So I do have a recipe out there that I'll link to down below. It's actually a 2-part recipe, because the first one is showing me making the infused oil. That was before I started adding the castor oil to such things. I don't do that like for my skin cream oil, but for more and more like the muscle rub oil that I make, and the just several other things, I'm getting to where I start to add some castor oil, because that's also going to be very helpful, especially when you're talking about joint and muscle rubs. So again, I'll link to the 2 parts of that healing salve set down below. Again, one is the infused oil, the other one is showing me making the salve, and some possible ideas for essential oils that you can add to yours. So anyway, that's my list thus far. Hopefully I will remember to type this up. And again, I'm sure I'm forgetting something that I stock up on or have, and it's just didn't occur to me. But, these are the very basics anyway. So please, again, share down below your own thoughts and ideas in the comments so people can learn from you as well. And don't forget to check out the links I'll be putting in the description box to the playlist and more. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.